Hey guys, I'm T and welcome to the channel. If you're new here, we make trendy and fun crochet tutorials twice a week, and if you haven't already, smash that like button, drop a comment down below, and subscribe to join in on the fun. In today's tutorial, we're making a ruffle crop top using the Suzette Stitch. The top features playful ruffles, a slight wrap for the body, and a hood because hoods make everything better. Speaking of, by now y'all already know the drill, but just in case you're new, better crochet tutorials and patterns are here with even more dropping twice weekly, so consider clicking the bell to subscribe and you'll never miss an upload. Also, do me a huge favor and give this video a big thumbs up if you like it, or 2 thumbs down if you don't. Either way, it's a great way to show support so I can keep putting out free tutorials every Wednesday and Sunday. Now, it's time to get on the show, so without further ado. For this project, any category 4 yarn will work, but I used a total of 335 grams of yarn. That's 755 yards if you're stateside. As for tools, a 5mm hook, scissors, stitch markers, and a tape measure. There is a written pattern down below. Use offer code TCDDIY for a discount off any $9.99 plus order, and enter this week's pattern giveaway by telling us a smell that instantly takes you back to your childhood. Mine would have to be shrimp chips and squid snacks. Detail for the giveaway down below. We're using 4 stitches for this project, and they'll be as follows. Chain, slip stitch, single crochet, half double crochet, and double crochet. This tutorial is made for a size small. You can adjust it for your size and explain how to in the video, so let's get started. Getting this top started, we're all going to grab our category 4 yarn and make a slip knot. Then we're all going to grab our 5mm hook and start off by making an odd number chain that reaches from mid-chest, roughly where an underwire would sit, up to the top of our shoulder. I need roughly 11 inches or 28 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain 47, and I actually already have this portion completed, so I'm just going to be doing a small sample size with you. Now that we have our chain, we're all going to block off that last chain and do a chain 1. Now that chain 1 doesn't count as a stitch, that's our turning chain. Now into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, we're going to do our first Suzette stitch. So all that's going to be is a single and double crochet into that same stitch. So bring your hook down into that chain that we blocked off, starting with 1 single crochet, then into that same chain with a double crochet. Now that single and double crochet is going to be our first Suzette stitch set. Now after every set, we are going to skip that following stitch and then do our next set into the next. Because that double crochet counts as that following stitch, if we work into there, we will accidentally be increasing. So we're always going to skip 1 stitch and into the next, insert with a single, then into that same with a double crochet. And we're going to continue on with our Suzette stitch set. So skipping a stitch and into the next, insert with a single and double until we have 2 chains left. Now that we've made our way all the way down with our first row, leaving the last 2 chains, we're now going to do a half double crochet into that last chain just to keep it nice and blunt. So yarn over, into that last chain, we're going to insert with 1 half double crochet, and now our row 1 is complete. We have the same amount of stitches as chains that we made. Now for the shoulder portion that we're currently doing, we're going to continue on with this row with no increases, no decreases. So just to get started on the following row together, we're all going to chain 1 and flip. That chain 1 doesn't count as a stitch, that's our turning chain. Then into that first stitch, simply insert with a single and into that same with a double crochet. Now as a really quick tip, every Suzette stitch set will be worked into our previous row's single crochet to get the texture that we want. So we're going to skip that following stitch, which is per usual. Then into that next, we're going to insert with a single and double, and we can tell that that's a single crochet from our previous row because it's a little bit shorter than the rest of the stitches. Continue on with our Suzette stitch set till we have 2 stitches left. We just made our way down with our row 2, leaving the last 2 stitches. Now all we're going to do is half double crochet into that last. So skip that second to last stitch and into the last stitch from our previous row, insert with 1 half double. Now our row 2 is complete. From here, it is going to be a repeat of this row with no increases and no decreases until this portion reaches roughly 2 inches before the tip of our shoulder. So when we're putting this up to ourselves, we're going to want to make sure that the tail end is right by the side of the base of our neck. Then the bottom of our first row is going to be at mid-chest, right where an underwire would sit. Then I will meet everyone back right after an even number row. Now, as you guys can see, I already have my shoulder portion already completed. I have a total of 12 rows. My width is just about 3.5 inches or 9 centimeters. Now from here, we're going to do the following 2 rows. That's going to help us curve down to our underarm portion. Now it is just going to be 2 decreased rows just to make sure that we have a really smooth curve that leads down to our underarm. So what we're going to do is making sure that this is still placed where it would sit once when it's completed. So tail end right at the side of the base of our neck. And the first row's point is still at mid-chest where our underwire would sit. We're going to insert our stitch marker into any even numbered stitch from the top that's nearest to the corner of our underarm. Now I've inserted my stitch marker into the 18th stitch from the top. The top is the tail end. Then from here, we're going to do our following Suzette Stitch row. So since we should all be along the bottom, chain 1, flip our work. We're going to do our normal Suzette stitches all the way up, leaving 4 stitches right before our stitch marker. Then I'll meet you back. So we've made our way up with our first underarm row, leaving 4 stitches right before our stitch marker. Now we're all going to do a decrease of 3 double crochets. So starting with the yarn over, we are going to skip that following stitch, and into the next, we're going to insert, pull through, next stitch, pull through, and next stitch, which should be the last stitch right before our stitch marker, pull through. We should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loops on our hook. We're going to yarn over, pull through the first 4, then yarn over, pull through 2. And now our first underarm row is complete. Now from here, the following row is going to start with a decrease as well. So we're going to chain 2 and flip. And we're going to start this row off with a decrease of 2 half doubles. So yarn over, insert into that first stitch, pull through, next stitch, pull through, yarn over, pull through all 4, then another decrease of 2 half double crochet right after that. So yarn over, into that following, pull through, into that following, pull through, yarn over, pull through 4. Now we're going to do our Suzette stitch per usual. Now the following stitch that we have should be a single crochet from our previous row, so we're going to insert directly into that next stitch with a Suzette stitch, so single and double. We're going to skip 1 stitch into the next single and double and make our way all the way down, closing off the row with just 1 half double crochet into that last stitch. Then I'll meet you back. Alright, so our first 2 underarm rows are completed. Technically, these are the 2 rows that curve down to our underarm. Now we're going to do the actual underarm portion. So what that is going to be is an odd number row that ends on a decrease. Then our following even number row will not have any increases or decreases. So since we're all along the bottom, we're going to do our following row together. So to get started on our first technical underarm row, we're going to do our Suzette stitch all the way up, leaving 4 stitches again. Then I'll meet you back once more. So we have made our way all the way down, leaving the last 4 stitches. Now we're going to close off this row with a decrease. So we're going to yarn over, skip that following stitch, and into the next, we're going to insert, pull through, into that next, pull through, and into that next, which should be our last. Pull through for a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loops on our hook. Then yarn over, pull through the first 4, yarn over, pull through 2. Now from here, our following row is going to be another Suzette stitch row, but with no increases and no decreases. So we're going to chain 1, flip our work. Do our Suzette stitch all the way down, closing off the row with just 1 half double crochet, then I'll meet you back. Alright, so we are back. We have just completed our first 2 underarm rows. From here, it is going to be a repeat of these 2 previous rows. So that is going to be an odd number row that ends on a decrease, then an even number row that doesn't have any increases or decreases until this top edge that we have right here becomes roughly 1 inch underneath our underarm. Then I will meet everyone back right after an even number row. Then we can work into the rest of the underarm portion together. Now I actually already have this portion already completed. I have a total of 16 rows so far. The top of my underarm portion is now roughly at 1 inch underneath our underarm. Then what we're going to do from here is just do Suzette stitch rows. No increases, no decreases until we now have a portion that can reach over to mid underarm. So making sure that the tail end is still placed at the side of the base of our neck. The bottom edge of the first row is still at mid chest where an underwire would sit. We're just going to continue on with our Suzette stitch rows until this reaches mid underarm. Then we will all meet back right after we have our last row. That last row does need to end on an odd number, so along the top. Then do a chain up 1 and cut. Then I'll meet everyone back. Alright, so we are back. We have just completed one of our front panels, and I have a total of 19 rows. This total width is roughly 5.5 inches or 14 centimeters. Now what we're going to do is do a chain up one and cut, then repeat everything for a second front panel. Everything is going to be exactly the same, and once we have both of them completed, we're now going to get started on the back panel. Now, I already have a decent amount of my back panel already completed, so we're going to do small sample sizes of the underarm and width together. Now, what we're all going to start off by doing is make a chain for the same amount of stitches that we have for our last underarm row for the front panel. For those of you that have my numbers, I had a total of 23 stitches for my last row. So to get started on my back panel, I made a chain of 23, then I will meet everyone back, but I'll be doing just a small sample size with you. Now that we have our chain, we're going to get started on our first underarm row. So block off that last chain and do a chain 1. Now that chain 1 doesn't count as a stitch, that's our turning chain. Into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, insert with our first Suzette stitch. Then we're just going to continue on with our Suzette stitch, closing off the row with just 1 half double crochet. We've just made our way down with our first Suzette stitch row for the back panel. We're basically going to mirror the underarm portion that we have for the front panel. So what we're going to do is start off by doing our Suzette stitch rows with no increases, no decreases for the same amount of rows that we have for the front panel that also didn't have any increases or decreases. For those of you that have my numbers, I had a total of 4 non-increase, non-decrease rows. So once when I have the 4, I'll meet everyone back so that we can do the few increased rows together, then we can work on the width of the back panel. So we are back. I have just completed the first few rows of my underarm portion, and those are just Suzette stitch rows with no increases, no decreases. Like I said previously, I had a total of 4 rows. Now we're going to do our first increase row together. So what we're going to do is chain 1, flip our work, do our Suzette stitch all the way down, leaving the last 2 stitches. So we have just made our way all the way down with our first increase row. We should have all left the last 2 stitches. Now to do our Suzette stitch increase, into that last stitch, we're going to do 1 single, 1 half, 1 double crochet. So skip 1 stitch and into the last, which should be the last stitch, we're going to insert with 1 single, also into that last stitch, 1 half double, and also into that last stitch with 1 double crochet, and that is our first increase row. Now from here, we're going to continue to repeat these 2 previous rows. So every even number row is just going to be our Suzette stitch row, no increases, no decreases. Every odd number row is going to end with the same increase that we just did together for the same amount of increased rows that we did for the underarm portion. Once we have that completed, we should all have just 2 more underarm rows to do, because remember when we did the underarm portion, the first 2 rows that we did a decrease into both of those rows. Now we still need to do an increase into our last 2 underarm rows to match this same curve that we have. So go ahead and get this portion of our underarm completed, then I'll meet you back to the last 2 underarm rows. Now for those of you that have my numbers, after this 5th row, so after this increase row that we just did together, my 2 following rows are going to be the increase rows. So what we're going to do is chain 2 and flip. Now to start off our Suzette stitch row with an increase, we're going to insert with 4 half double crochets all into that first stitch. So there's 1, there's 2, there's 3, and there's 4. That is our increase. Then from here, we're going to Suzette stitch per usual. So skip a stitch, Suzette stitch into the next, all the way down, closing off the row with a half double crochet to keep it blunt. Then just to do our increase together once more at the end of the row, chain 1, flip our work, Suzette stitch all the way back down, leaving the last 2 stitches, then I'll meet you back. So we have made our way down, and we're going to do our following increase. So we should have all made our way down, leaving the last 2 stitches, and to end the row off with an increase, we're going to skip that second to last stitch, and into the next, insert with a single, with a half double, and a double crochet all into that last stitch. And now with that last increase row, our underarm portion should be complete. We should have the same amount of total underarm rows that we have for the front panel. Now from here, we're going to make a chain for the same amount of stitches that we skipped when we got started on our front panel's underarm portion. So for those of you that have my numbers, I inserted my stitch marker into the 18th stitch from the top. So for my back panel's underarm portion, I'm going to make a chain of 18. So now that we have the chain for the back panel completed, we're now just going to do Suzette stitch rows with absolutely no increases, no decreases, working our way across our back. So since I already have this portion of the back panel completed, I'm just going to show you guys what I have. Now I have my underarm portion and the width of my back panel completed. I have a total of 40 rows. My width is just about 11 inches or 28 centimeters. Now, like I said, all we're going to do is our Suzette Stitch rows with no increases, no decreases, working our way across our back. Now we want to make sure that the edges of the width of our back panel is 2 inches before the tip of our shoulder, working across our back until it's 2 inches before the tip of our following shoulder. Now we want to make sure that the amount of back panel width rows, so that's not including the underarm portion, needs to be more than both of our front panel shoulder rows combined. So just to show you guys what I'm talking about, is it needs to be more than the shoulder rows. So for my shoulder rows, I have a total of 12 rows for one front panel, 12 rows for the next, so a total of 24 rows. My back panel width needs to be more than 24 rows because we want to make sure that we're leaving a little bit of space for our neck. So since I did a total of 40 rows, that means I have a total of 33 rows for the width of my back panel. That does leave me a decent amount of space for my neck when the whole thing is completed. Now, once we have the width of this portion completed, it might seem a little wide, but don't worry, because once we have everything all seamed up and we're connecting the front panels together, it is going to have a little bit of an overlap in the front just for a little bit more security, but also for a really cute detail. So we will have that just to help us if it seems a little bit too big. But once we have that, we do want to make sure that we end along the bottom. Then we can get straight into the underarm portion together from there. But the second underarm portion is going to be done exactly the same way as the front panel's underarm portion. So just as a refresher, since we should all be along the bottom, we're going to insert our stitch marker into the same amount of stitches that we inserted into for the front panel. For those of you that have my numbers, I inserted into the 18th stitch. So I'm going to insert my stitch marker into the 18th stitch from the top on this side. Then do our first 2 underarm rows together, which are the first 2 rows with the decreases. Then we're going to complete the rest with the rest of our underarm portion that we have here. Once we have the same amount of rows completed, do a chain up 1 and cut, then I will meet everyone back. So we are back. The entirety of our back panel is complete. Now, what we're going to do from here is seam everything up. So we're going to start by placing our front panel on top of our back panel, and we're going to seam up our sides first. So once our front panel is on top of our back panel, we're going to insert our hook into the bottom corner stitch of both the front and the back. Then go ahead and insert your yarn onto your hook. We're then going to pull our working yarn through and do a chain up of 1 to secure, and just do a single crochet row working in through both the front and the back panel at the same time. So finding that first stitch into the front panel, insert, first stitch into the back panel, insert, and single crochet everything together. Again, next stitch into the front, next stitch into the back, and single. Continue doing this until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, do a chain up 1 and cut, then repeat on the other side. So now that our sides are all seamed up, the next thing we're going to do is seam up the shoulders. So first things first, making sure that our work is still flipped wrong side out, meaning the seams that we did for the sides is still on the outside. Then we're going to insert our hook into the top corner stitch of the front and back panel, then same single crochet seam. So insert our yarn onto our hook, pull through, and do a chain up of 1 to secure. And from here, finding our first side row, we're just going to be putting 1 single crochet into every side row. So finding our first side row, find that top loop within the front, find the same top loop within the back, insert, and single crochet around everything. Again, next side row within the front, next side row within the back, insert, and single, and that's it. We're going to continue with 1 single crochet into every side row until we don't have any more side rows left to work into within the front panel. When we don't, do a chain up 1 and cut, then repeat on the other side. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is our bottom band. So we're going to start with a single crochet row, and we are going to combine both of our 2 front panels as well. So first thing we're going to want to do is try our piece on. We are then going to insert our stitch marker into any even numbered row, right where our front panels can cross over and touch comfortably. Now, this is going to be completely up to you. So if you would like for this to cover more, if you can, go ahead and pull further in. Or if you would like to show more, keep this as relaxed as possible, but make sure it's still just a smidge bit snug so that the finished garment isn't too loose. I went ahead and inserted my stitch marker into the 6th side row. From the edge on both sides for my front panel, we want to make sure that our stitch markers are into the same side rows. Then from here, we're going to do a single crochet row. So let's start by inserting our hook into any one of the side rows along the bottom of our piece. So we're going to do a chain up of 1 to secure. Then working towards my front panel, we're just going to alternate between 1 to 2 single crochets into every side row until we're worked into the side row right before our stitch marker stitch. So finding our first side row, this is mine right here, I'm going to find that top loop and insert, starting with just 1 single crochet. Now this is my following side row. I'm going to find that top loop and insert with 2 single crochet. Let's do that again. This is my next side row, insert with 1. This is my following side row, insert with 2. Continue this until we're worked into the side row right before our stitch marker side row. So I've just made my way all the way over until I'm worked into my side row right before my stitch marker side row. Then from here, we're just going to take our second front panel and we're just going to place it on top of the front panel that we're working on, and we're just going to continue on with the single crochet row, working in through both the front and the bottom front panel at the same time until we don't have any more. So I just completed putting 1 single crochet into that side row. So my next set of stitches should be 2 single crochets. So into that first side row within the front panel, I'm going to insert in through there. Then into my following side row within the bottom front panel, which is my stitch marker side row, I'm going to insert in through there with 2 single crochets. So there's 1. Then in through the same side row within both the front and the back panel, insert with a second. Then into my following side row within the top front panel, following side row within the bottom front panel, insert with just 1. Then into that following side row within the front panel, following side row within the bottom front panel, we're going to insert with 2, so everything should be per usual. 1 single crochet into that top loop within the top front panel, 1 single crochet into that side row within the bottom front panel and insert with just 1. And from here, just continue on alternating between 1 to 2 single crochets into every side row, making our way all the way around. Now, as a really quick tip, this single crochet row is going to be as wide as this portion can stretch. So once it's completed, try your piece on. If it's a little too tight, reduce some stitches with a looser grip, or if it's too loose, reduce some stitches with a tighter grip. Then I'll meet you back. So we are back. Our single crochet row along the bottom is completed. Everything is fitting nicely. So now from here, we're going to start the bottom band. We're all going to make a chain the length that we'd like for the bottom band to be. So I'm going to start by making a chain 20. That's just about 4 inches or 10 centimeters. So now that we have our chain, we're all going to do our first slip stitch row. So block off that last chain and do a chain 1. Now that chain 1 doesn't count as a stitch, so that's our turning chain. Then into the chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, we're all going to insert with a slip stitch. So go ahead and insert your hook. Then we're going to yarn over and gently pull through both loops on our hook. We do want to make sure that we're not tugging too tightly, otherwise the following row will be too tight to work into. Again, into that following chain, yarn over, pull through everything, and from here continue with 1 slip stitch into every chain. So we've just made our way down with our first slip stitch row. Now we're going to connect it into the base. So just finding that next available stitch into the base, insert with a slip stitch. That slip stitch into the base doesn't actually count as a stitch, that's just to connect. Then to work your way up to the next row, slip stitch into the next available stitch into the base, flip our work. Then we're going to be putting 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. Now finding the last stitch from our previous row, we're going to insert into that back loop, or the loop that's furthest away from us, then yarn over, pull through everything on our hook. Again, into that next stitch's back loop, yarn over, pull through everything. From here, continue with 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. At the end of the row, chain 1, flip our work, and put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch again, and I'll meet you back at the end of our row 3. We are back. We have just completed our first 3 rows. Now we're going to connect it into the base the same way that we just did. So finding that next available stitch, insert with a slip stitch. Remember that slip stitch into the base doesn't count as a stitch. Then to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that following stitch into the base, flip our work, and repeat. From here, simply repeat our 2 previous rows with no increases, no decreases, making our way all the way around. When we don't have any more stitches left to work into, I'll meet you back so we can seam it all together. And now that we have made our way all the way around with our back loop slip stitch rows, we're now going to seam it together. Now this seam is going to be an outside loop slip stitch seam, so we're all going to make sure that our work is flipped right side out because the seam is going to look like another back loop slip stitch row. Then insert our hook into the corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. Then yarn over and pull through everything and do a chain up of 1 to secure. Then finding that first stitch into the front panel, we're going to insert only into that front loop. First stitch into the back panel, insert only into that back loop. Then we're going to yarn over and pull through everything on our hook. Again, next stitch into the front panel, insert into that front loop. Next stitch into the back panel, insert only into that back loop. Then yarn over and pull through everything, and that's it. We're going to continue doing this till we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, do a chain up of 1 and cut, then I'll meet you back. So we are back now that the entirety of the bottom band is completed. Now we're going to get started on the hood. So first things first, we're all going to make sure the work is flipped right side out, right side up. We're going to try on our piece, then we're going to insert our stitch markers into any stitch where we'd like for the edge of the hood to be. Now I would suggest roughly an inch beneath our collarbone, but it's completely up to you. I went ahead and inserted my stitch marker into the 18th stitch from the top. This is just about 4 inches or 10 centimeters. Then we're going to do a single crochet row. So go ahead and insert your hook into your stitch marker stitch. Then, just working our way towards the back, put 1 single crochet into every stitch. Then, once we reach our side rows within the top of the back panel, again, alternate between 1 to 2 single crochets into every side row, starting with 1. Then 1 single crochet into every stitch, working our way back down until we're worked into our following stitch marker stitch. Then I'll meet you back. We are back and we have just completed our single crochet row. Now from here, we're going to do our following Suzette Stitch row, but with some increases, just so we can get a little bit deeper of a hood. So what we're going to do is chain 1 and flip. Now to do the increase of the hood, all we're going to do is a Suzette Stitch set, but into every stitch. So just finding that first stitch, insert with a single and a double. Then again, into that following stitch with a single and a double, and we're just going to do this all the way around until we have 1 stitch left. Then I'll meet you back. So I've just made our way all the way around with our Suzette stitches. This is the increased row. We should have left 1 stitch left. Now we're just going to close off the row with 1 half double crochet. So all we're going to do is yarn over into that last stitch with 1 half double crochet, and now our first Suzette stitch row is completed. Now from here, we're just going to do regular Suzette stitch rows until we get the height of the hood that we want. So from here, we're going to chain 1 and flip. So just like our normal Suzette stitch rows, into the top of that first stitch, insert with a single and a double crochet. Then we're going to skip a stitch into the next with, again, a single and a double crochet. And that's it. From here, we're going to continue to skip a stitch into the next with a single and a double, making our way all the way around. Then when we have 2 stitches left, 1 half double crochet into that last stitch. And that's it. From here, just continue to repeat this row, so no more increases, no more decreases, until this hood can reach the height that we'd like. Then I'll meet everyone back so we can seam it all together. So we are back and the total height of our hood is complete. So including our first single crochet row, my total amount of rows that I have is 48 rows, and this height is just about 13 inches or 33 centimeters. Now from here, we're going to seam everything together, and this seam is going to be done exactly the same way as our side seam. So just to talk you guys through it, we're going to make sure that our work is flipped wrong side out, so that once when we flip it right side out, the seam will be along the inside. We're going to insert our hook into the corner stitch of both the front and the back panel, do our same single crochet seam, then when we don't have any more stitches left to work into, do a chain of 1 and cut. So we are back. We have just completed seaming up our hood, and now from here, we're going to get started on our sleeves. We're now ready to get started on our cute little ruffle sleeve. So we're all going to start by making sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up. We're then going to insert our hook into the side row that's nearest to our side seam within the armhole, and we're going to start with a single crochet row. So go ahead and insert your yarn onto your hook, but first make sure your work is flipped right side out, right side up. We are now going to pull our working yarn through and do a chain up of 1 to secure. And working into our side rows, we're simply going to alternate between 1 to 2 single crochet into every side row and 1 single crochet into every stitch, making our way all the way around. So just to do our first 2 side rows together, this is my first side row right here. I'm going to find that top loop and insert, starting with just 1 single crochet. This is my following side row. I'm going to insert in through there with 2 single crochet. And from here, just continue on with our single crochet row, making our way all the way around. Then once we have made our way all the way around, slip stitch into that chain space, then I'll meet you back. We are back and our first row is completed. Now the second row is going to be our first Suzette stitch row, but we're going to need to do some ruffles. So it's just going to be a Suzette stitch into every stitch, but we are going to do a decrease of 3 half doubles into the beginning and to the end of the row. So we're all going to start with a chain 2 and flip. Now what we're going to do is start with a decrease of 3 half doubles. So yarn over. Into that first stitch from our previous row, we're going to insert, pull through, next stitch, pull through, next, and pull through for a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loops on our hook. Then yarn over, pull through all 5. Now we're going to put 1 Suzette stitch set into every stitch. So just into that following, insert with 1 single, 1 double. Again, into that following stitch, 1 single and 1 double, and just continue with 1 Suzette stitch set into every stitch until we all have 3 stitches left. And we're just doing our first Suzette stitch row like this so we can get a cute little ruffle. So I've just made my way all the way around with my first Suzette stitch row. That was 1 Suzette stitch into every stitch. Then I have left the last 3 stitches. Now we're going to close off the row with a decrease of 3 half doubles. So yarn over into that third to last, pull through, second to last, pull through, and last, pull through, yarn over, pull through all 5. Now from here, we're all going to chain 1 and flip our work. Now this following row is going to start with 4 slip stitches. Now the 4 slip stitches does not actually count as a stitch. That's just to work our way into the row so that we can get started on the actual width of the piece. So after we flipped our work, we're going to start with 1, into that next, 2, next 3, next 4. Now we have worked our way into the row just a smidge. Remember, none of those stitches count as a stitch. After the 4 slip stitches, we are now also going to chain 1. That chain 1 will not count as a stitch. That's just to give us a little bit of height because the first stitch for this row is going to be a decrease of 3 half double crochets again. So after that chain 1, we're going to yarn over, and starting with that following stitch, we're going to insert, pull through, into that next stitch, pull through, next stitch, pull through, for a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loops on our hook again, then yarn over, pull through all 5. Now, this stitch that our decrease just made is actually going to be the first stitch for this row, so I'm going to insert my stitch marker into there. Then from here, we're going to do our normal Suzette stitch per usual. So we are going to skip that following stitch because it is a double crochet from our previous row, and into that next, which is our single crochet, we're going to insert with a single and a double crochet. Again, we're going to skip a stitch into the next with a single and with a double. So our Suzette stitches are per usual now. We're going to continue on with our Suzette stitches till we all have 9 stitches left. We are back and we are nearly complete with our third sleeve row. Now we all should have left a total of 9 stitches. Now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 stitches left. Now what we're going to do is yarn over. We're going to skip that following stitch and into the next, insert with a decrease of 3 half double crochets. Now we are going to be leaving the last 5 stitches of this row. So to get started on our following row, we're going to chain 1 and flip. From here, it's just going to be a repeat of our previous row until we work our way down till we don't have any more stitches left to work into. So just to do this together again, start with 4 slip stitches. Now remember, none of these slip stitches count as a stitch. Now that we've worked our way into our row with 4 slip stitches, we're all going to chain 1. Remember that chain 1 doesn't count as a stitch. That just gives us a little bit more height. And start the row off with a decrease of 3 half doubles. Now that we have our decrease, don't forget to insert a stitch marker into the top of that stitch because that is going to count as the first stitch for this row. Then from here, we're going to do our Suzette stitches. So skip a stitch into the next, insert with a single and double, skip a stitch, single and double into the next, and I'll meet everyone back when we have a total of 9 stitches left. So we are back. We've made our way all the way around with our Suzette stitches. We all should have left a total of 9 stitches. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Then close off the row with a decrease of 3 halves. So yarn over, skip that first stitch, into that next, pull through, next, pull through, next, pull through, yarn over, pull through everything. From here, we're going to continue to repeat this previous row, making our way all the way down until we get the total length that we'd like for the ruffle sleeve to be, or until we don't really have any more stitches to work into for the rows because we are decreasing quite a bit per row. Now I'm just going to continue until I can't decrease anymore, but once we have that, do a chain up a 1 and cut, then I'll meet you back. Alright, so we are back. We have just made our way all the way down with the total of our ruffle sleeve. I just worked my way all the way down until I couldn't do any more of the decreases, and I did do a chain up 1 and cut. Then we're going to repeat everything we did here on the other side, then do a chain up 1 and cut as well. Then once we have all that completed, the last thing we have to do is simply weave in all of our ends. And there you have it, y'all. Hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Join us on Instagram, Pinterest, or Twitter. Those links are down below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Catch you on the next one. Bye.